Hi, thank you so much for joining us today for our second part of our Citizen Science video resource, a calendar of citizen science projects. So if you didn't join us for part one, that took you through the concept for citizen science, some of the kind of benefits and challenges to do with outdoor learning as well. Whereas this video is going to take us through a little bit more of the practical citizen science projects that you and your students can get involved in throughout the year. Thank you very much for joining us. My name's Lottie and this is Anna. We both work on the education team at Earthwatch Europe. We are an environmental charity with science at our heart, and we work to really try and connect people with nature and give them the tools to help protect it. So let's get started. So today we're going to be going through, as I mentioned, a real range of citizen science projects that you and your students can get involved in. We're going to be splitting them up literally by month, so it'll be a real calendar. And each one will be following what the project is, when you might want to do it, why, what's the kind of impact of the project. Plus we'll be linking in the kind of curriculum links, both to English and Wales curriculums, and we'll be talking about some of the practical adaptations for you and your pupils. What we would really like to flag before we get into it is that it's not an exclusive list. There are plenty of other citizen science projects and plenty of different kind of subject areas. And this is just a kind of collection that we've gathered today to kind of show you the variety and how they can be spread across the year. But we also want to flag that you don't have to take part in all of these. And you don't have to do them in the exact way that we are going to be talking about today. There are plenty of ways to adapt these projects to the time constraints or the pupil needs that your school might have. And that really is the most important thing, is making it accessible for you as an educator. So let's get started.
Okay, so we will begin with January. I just want to highlight before going any further, we have listed the English and the Welsh curriculum links, as you can see on the right-hand side of the slides. We're not going to read them out. You can always pause the video and just double check how they link. But one thing I do want to highlight is that there is cross-curriculum links. So it's not just one subject that these projects link with. They link with multiple, which is really good. So January. We've got the RSPB Big Schools Bird Watch. So it occurs in late January, and what students would do is count birds in their school grounds. Resources are supplied by the RSPB, and this includes ID guides or identification guides of the birds. Why would we do it? The results are submitted to a national database, so this helps scientists monitor bird populations, so they can see if they're changing year by year, if they're increasing or decreasing in different areas of the UK. Timing. So we'd say 15 minutes, 30 minutes if students are really into it, but it doesn't have to be too long. It's not a huge time commitment. The actual project itself doesn't have a huge time commitment. I think it's around 15 minutes, but there is no maximum if you really want your students to spot all the birds. But that can relate to focus. So we say that the difficulty is easy because it's quite a short activity. There's not a huge amount of focus required because it can be quite short. So the Key Stage 1, we would suggest Key Stage 1 would be supported because of the identification of the birds, and then Key Stage 2 and 3 can also be involved. So adaptations. What if it's raining? As it may be in January. So we can say that you could watch the birds through the windows and identify them that way. But also to help with this, you could make your own bird feeders. This is also beneficial, as in wintertime, bird feed is it's harder for birds to get food. So if we can give them some, that's going to help them out. And also it will help seeing them as well, because they'll come for the food. So other adaptations include identifying single bird species at a time if you have younger years. So maybe it's overwhelming to have lots of different bird species. Maybe they just focus on finding wood pigeons. So that can be a good adaptation. To make it more complicated, you could have bird identification quizzes, and you can analyze historic birdwatch data, which is provided by the RSPB. So that could bring in maths curriculum links there, and you could make graphs from the results. So yeah, there's quite a few things you can do with this activity in January.
So for February, we want to talk a little bit about the Woodland Trust Nature's Calendar. So basically for this one, you kind of might go out onto your school grounds or maybe out into your community if you want to be a little bit more ambitious, but somewhere that you're going to be going quite a lot with your pupils. Your pupils go past a lot. You will choose a location and then record the changes to nature that you witness across a kind of period of time. So February is a great time to do it. Because it's kind of coming into spring. So if you kind of set up the activity now, you kind of set up the location that you're going to be focusing on, you can then keep going back to it throughout the year. And spring is a really nice time to notice a lot of those changes. So, you know, you might choose a big old tree on your school grounds, and your children can then go out every single break time once they know what they're looking for. And every single day can be checking to see whether that first leaf on the tree or the first flower on the tree kind of starts to come out. But you can also be doing things like looking for frog spawn or the first butterfly. But a tree is a great one because it means that if you were trying to put some of the ownership on the children at break times or lunch times to notice it, it means that there's no worries about them spotting things that maybe weren't there. A tree leaf is going to stay still. So why might you want to take part in this one? It really does help scientists monitor the effects of weather and climate change on wildlife. So they're looking at kind of the big changes across the year. And when it becomes a kind of real long-term study, maybe something that you do over years, you can really begin to see those kind of like historical patterns that start to emerge and see how they're changing, which is really interesting. So as mentioned, this is a really adaptable activity. We've kind of put 15-30 minutes here, but that's mainly for kind of like the project setup and getting the kids used to the idea that they might be like looking at one specific area on their school grounds or in their community. But the difficulty is pretty easy. You know, once they know what to look for, hopefully it should be pretty easy for them to identify. So in terms of adaptations, you might want to have a go at observing through the classroom window. So say if it was a tree, maybe choose one that's close to a classroom window. So on a rainy day, you could, you know, when you're doing an indoor break time, the kids can still have a chance to see if they can see any changes. And what's really nice is then the students could win a prize for when that kind of, for the first one to kind of notice something on the school grounds. And if you wanted to make it more difficult, you know, the students can choose different areas, take ownership of different areas on the school grounds. But sometimes it's nice to do it as kind of a team activity. But there's also loads of ways to kind of extend this. So you might want to begin to graph seasonal data, and as I mentioned, compare the historical records. And it can be a really great way to kind of start having some of those climate change discussions, noticing some of the changes to nature right in front of them throughout the year. But February is a great time to kind of set this project up.
Nice. And then we go into March. So we're actually recording this video at the end of February. So this project in itself is only in a few weeks. So this is the big plastic count. So when it occurs, it's a week in March. And what is it? So the idea is that pupils will go back home after each day and record how much plastic their household throws away over the whole week. So they'll generate a tally of different pieces and different types of plastic that are thrown away over the whole week. And this can be set up individually, or it can be set up as a class. So you would have access to like a class data. So all the pupils will put their information in separately. So it's still the pupil who records the data, but then you could have like this class cohort of a group that are all recording their data. And also they would get a certificate of participation, which is always a good motivation. Why do this? It will help scientists understand how much plastic is thrown away, but it also might help your students start understanding just how much they throw away in one week. The timing is 1 week of counting plastic items. So there is a time commitment here. However, the onus of the time commitment is on the students and their families. So we say the difficulty is medium due to that time commitment. It isn't a time commitment for teachers, so that is one benefit of it. So it's something that could be put as homework. So we say it's good for Key Stage 1 and 2. There's lots of counting involved. It's not too complicated. Tally charts aren't too complicated. The adaptations to make it a bit more complicated if you wanted is that the big plastic count do give historic data. And so you could use this example data to make graphs, see what's changed about plastic use. But also it might give your students a chance to become science communicators. So they could create some posters about reducing waste or recycling. Again, these posters can be very simple and be just don't drop rubbish, or they could be more complicated, like, oh, think about using this alternative compared to this, so you don't generate the rubbish. So you've got some adaptations in there. And finally, they could research recycling in the UK, because that's quite interesting. It's something that's happening constantly, but how much do we actually know about it? So that is March.
Oh, so for April, we've got a very exciting project because this is actually an Earthwatch Europe run project, and this is the Great UK WaterBlitz. So for this one, it occurs in April, but registration for this one opens in February or March, and it also repeats in September. So we'll be talking about it in September as well. So what is it? Basically, you measure your water quality by testing for phosphates and nitrates, two pollutants of our fresh water in the UK. And it's looking at fresh water. So you'll be looking at rivers, lakes, reservoirs, that type of thing. And it's brilliant because it contributes to a nationwide water quality monitoring report. You really are getting a sense of not only kind of contributing to that bigger scale, how's our water doing across the UK, but it also really helps you connect with your water bodies and actually the health of your fresh water locally as well, which is really interesting. And I think kids are often really interested in that when they're thinking about going swimming in those places. It really has like a personal connection. So this one, we would say, has a more moderate difficulty. You do need some kit for this because you are doing like some chemical testing. And it takes a bit longer because you would need to kind of run a site visit to get yourself out to the water body, unless you manage to have a pond or not a pond, but a lake or river on your school grounds, which is, you know, pretty amazing. But the kit, once you register, would be provided, so that would be totally fine, but it obviously is quite fiddly, so we would say it's not usually recommended for Key Stage 1 unless they're really supported. But what's a great way to kind of make this an easier one for teachers to be able to deliver with pupils is actually putting the onus onto families to be able to go out and take part. Not only does that kind of widen the field of samples, because your whole class aren't just going to the same area, but it also means you're not having to worry about your health and safety risks of a site visit to a water body. And they can go out and kind of have those experiences with their family, engage with the activity then, and then hopefully come back after the weekend is over and potentially share their experiences with the class. Especially if you do engage with our like What's in Your Water webinar. That's a really great introduction to the project. It also introduces fresh water as a topic, why it's so important that it's healthy, and why isn't it always healthy? What are the kind of pollutants to our fresh water? And so beginning those types of discussions before they go off for the kind of weekend doing the Great UK WaterBlitz, and then potentially coming back afterwards and gathering their reflections. Even then, it means that the children that didn't get a chance to do the Great UK WaterBlitz over the weekend still get to kind of understand the experience, maybe seeing some photos or videos that the kids have made over the weekend. So it's a really great way. There's loads of different ways that classes can engage with this. But yeah, that's for April.
And coming into May, so I'm going to introduce an app called Merlin. So when this app can actually be used year round, but this app is all about birdsong, and in May is when the dawn chorus really peaks, which is why we've incorporated it into this month. So a little bit more about the app. So it's an app that records birdsong, and it can then tell you what bird is singing. I really love using this. Why do it? It supports wildlife recordings. So the recordings that you take then go into a database and help scientists understand what birds are where and how their populations are doing. But also why we should do it is it really helps a connection with nature from another sense. Once you kind of get your ear into listening to bird sounds, you start noticing it more. And like even in town, you might hear a robin and be like, oh, didn't expect to hear that there. So it's a really, really great resource, and it's very simple. The interface of the app is really easy to use. So the timings, it can be as short as 15 minutes. If you're in a school ground and you haven't got huge access to nature, there might only be a couple of birds around. And once you've heard a robin for 5-10 minutes, you might want to leave it there. But if you have the desire and the time and the energy, you could potentially run a dawn chorus activity. It will require more time and planning, so it would make it more difficult, but you would have access to loads of different bird sound, and it could be pretty amazing. So there's a easy to moderate difficulty there. One key difficulty with this is that it requires use of an app, so either a phone or a tablet. Obviously, not all students will have access to this. So what could happen is if a teacher was comfortable, they could download the app and show it being used and have students gather around and be quiet and use the app. Another thing which is related to the adaptations is if you don't really have access to these apps, it could be something where you use recordings from online and you play these recordings, and the students might start identifying birdsong themselves by knowing what bird they're hearing, and then when they go out in nature, they might start recognizing that. So that is an adaptation. If you're using it and it's horrible weather and the birds are all hiding, you can also start playing their sounds through the wonder of the internet. Another adaptation is making a research page about birds they find. So again, this can be made more or less complicated. So it could just be drawings of a bird. It could be a labeled drawing, a diagram, and it could include really basic facts, or it could include more complicated facts and require like a research element to the activity. And due to this ability to change the difficulty of a program, we're saying it's applicable to Key Stage 1s, 2, and 3, especially if they're only listening to one bird. So Key Stage 1, they might only hear one bird, and that might make it a little bit more simple for them to access. So yeah, Merlin app would recommend for everyone to use.
Yeah, totally agree. So for June, we now get into our kind of pollinator season coming into summer. So this one that we want to signpost to in June is the UK Pollinator Monitoring Scheme. So the FIT counts, which are the flower insect time counts. So basically it's where pupils will observe a flowering plant for around 10 minutes and count the kind of pollinating insects that come and land on the flower, basically. It contributes to national pollinator monitoring, learning when and where pollinators are out and about. And it can be done any time from April to September, but June's a brilliant time for it. It's a super easy activity, so there's no kit required. Obviously, you are having to do a little bit of species identification. It's not super detailed, but you do have to begin to be able to identify your pollinators. But they're great skills for kids to be able to build and to kind of start conversations about the fact that bugs aren't scary. They're brilliant. So as we mentioned, it's about 10 minutes for the observation itself. But the activity can be kind of any time constraints that you want. And it really can be for a mix of ages. The main challenge with this one can sometimes be getting kids to sit still and concentrate on one flower for 10 minutes. And if that's not going to be possible for your pupils on certain days, that's totally fine. Some of the methods that we thought might be useful to kind of help engage kids in this one is potentially letting them get their energy out before getting them to engage with this one, allowing them to have a little bit of a runabout before they have to sit down and look at a flower for 10 minutes. And also reducing the time limits. You know, maybe it's just that they do 1 minute to begin with, and then you kind of keep extending it and seeing how much they can do it for. But beginning to build these skills, even if they can't do the full 10 minutes, is still brilliant. And hopefully it's a really kind of accessible one, because hopefully every school grounds, fingers crossed, has at least one flower in June out. And we also pray that it's sunny at this point in the year, so we don't have loads of, it's a difficult one to adapt for like an indoor atmosphere. But there are loads of different ways that you can extend this, or bring in kind of pollinator conversations, even if you felt like actually this activity was too much of a challenge for your pupils. So doing some kind of pollinator biodiversity quizzes, bringing in conversations about life cycles and food links to like pollinators and food chains is really, really important. And often kids don't make those connections about the fact that pollinators are needed to produce our food. So bringing in those types of conversations can be really, really valuable as well. And then making fun activities about, you know, creating fact files where you draw and label your favorite pollinator and come up with some kind of fun facts around them. A really nice ways to kind of engage kids with insects and pollinators that are out and about in the summer. Yeah.
So moving and expanding from, well, not moving on, expanding on the pollinator topic. In July, we've got the big butterfly count. So it's from mid-July to early August. The students would complete a 15-minute butterfly survey, which means staying in one place and identifying any butterflies that come and pass. And those identifying guides would be given by the big butterfly count. Again, similar reasons to other tracking projects is that it allows scientists to understand national population changes and whether they've changed over years and numbers across the UK. So the time is 15 minutes of watching for butterflies, which does relate again to this difficulty in regards to focus. So throwing back to the project Lottie just discussed, there could be the opportunity to break this down into 5 minutes, even less time watching for butterflies to try and ensure that the focus is maintained. So in between those 5 minutes, there might be 5 minutes of running around and then 5 minutes of quiet watching. So yeah, this is the barrier, I'd say, is the focus of that 15 minutes. So the suggestion is Key Stage 1, 2, and 3. Potentially the focus might be easier with the older years, and also the identification might be slightly easier with the older years. Again, we're hoping that it's going to be sunny in July. If it's not really a project that can occur inside. However, you could try and have a look from through a window. But also there's other activities that can be done, including studying the butterfly life cycle. I know life cycles are part of the curriculum. You can look at adaptations of the butterfly and why it might be that way. And also, this is again data, the big butterfly count provide historic data. So you can look at the previous years, maps of butterflies and see where they are, their numbers, and make some comparisons between different areas and different times. So yeah, that's July.
Brill. So we're skipping August because you're hopefully on holiday, and going straight to September, where we can do the second round of the Great UK WaterBlitz. So we have a second Great UK WaterBlitz that runs in September. And so all of the things that I said in April still apply, obviously. But what's brilliant about this is that actually, if you start to do it, you know, twice a year, you can then begin to compare student results from the previous time that they did it? Did they notice anything different about the results or the process, and how the different kind of weather patterns might be affecting not only the results and the process, but also the pollution that they might or might not be seeing? And what's great, although this the Great UK WaterBlitz does require some equipment, as we mentioned, you get the kind of little pack with the little tubes to do your kind of chemical testing. It's such a brilliant way to get kids involved with a real like scientific project. They really can build some of those like scientific skills about working with chemicals, and it's quite exciting to do with a group of children. Well, so let's move on to October.
October is the time of Halloween. So we have a project from Surfers Against Sewage called the Million Mile Scream. Surfers Against Sewage run the Million Mile Clean throughout the year, but in October they make this a little bit special and relate it to Halloween. But what is the Million Mile Scream? It's a litter pick, but it does have data gathering incorporated, which allows us to call it Citizen Science Program. Because at the end of the litter pick, you actually tally up the different types of rubbish found, but also the different brands found. And Surfers Against Sewage have some interesting data about what brands keep appearing and what are the biggest polluters in terms of rubbish that is found across the UK. Why do it? It helps end single-use plastic, hopefully. It's also very much a physical activity that will help nature. Like you'll be able to see the difference between the start and the end of the activity, which can be really good for feelings of like eco-anxiety, etc., because you're making a positive physical difference on the environment. Timing. So this is adaptable. It doesn't have to be 60 minutes long. It can be very adaptable. If you're doing it in your school grounds, it might be a smaller ground. It might only be a 10-minute, 15-minute activity. If you are taking the children to a different area, a local park, it might be longer. What's quite interesting is when you sign up for cleans with Surfers Against Sewage, they do have like an insurance policy within there when you're doing clean under their name, which is quite good. So difficulty is a little bit higher due to the concern of potentially different rubbish that's found, and plus if any travel is required. And this also relates to it being for Key Stage 2 and 3 rather than Key Stage 1. The adaptations. So I did mention that it's linked to Halloween. That is because Surfers Against Sewage encourage people to wear costumes when they're doing the clean. So there is a potential here for the students to make costumes out of household rubbish to then do their litter picking, which could be pretty fun, linking to like structural design and art. Plus, Surfers Against Sewage actually give prizes to top costumes, so your school could end up winning a prize. Plus, to further adapt and extend this project, you could then do a school litter audit, looking at the different litter that your school generates. You could look at the plastic life cycle, where it comes from, where it goes, where it ends up, how long it takes to disappear. And finally, you could encourage students to look at their own plastic footprint. We have some resources on this if people do want access to that, but it's kind of what plastic they use in their everyday life and how that impacts the environment around them. So that is October.
Cool. And our one of our final ones is November. So this one, we are going to talk about the Seek app by iNaturalist. So you might have heard of this one before. It's a brilliant app, but it's completely open to use year round. But it's a really nice one to incorporate in these kind of winter months when nature isn't as obvious. So it's basically an app that uses recognition technology to identify the plants and animals all around you. And it basically just acts as like a nature tracker, helping scientists to know what species are where. But it's a really, really great way to begin to build some of those identification skills of both plants and animals local to your school grounds or local to your area. So it's a super adaptable activity, but it's a nice one to kind of run as a quick 15, 30 minutes. But it's very easy to do. The app is super user friendly, and like young children really can use this. And you just, take the photo of the little piece of nature that you've noticed, and it will just tell you what that species is, some facts about it. And it's a great one to do where the children and teachers are learning at the same time. And yeah, it's a brilliant one. What can be a barrier with this one is obviously the fact that it's an app, and therefore children need access to a phone or a tablet or an iPad to be able to engage. Now, some schools have that, and each pupil has, their own laptop, their own iPad or something. But in a situation where that's not the case, that's totally fine. You could either do it where teachers use their own personal phones or, school iPads or whatever to go out and do it with smaller groups of kids. Or for adapting it, because obviously it's November at this point, so it might be a little bit rainy, you could go out before you do this kind of session as a teacher and go out and take some photos of some nature that you see around the school grounds, and then bring them back in and run it as a kind of indoor activity with your class. So you put the photos up on the screen, they begin to kind of think about identifying some of those plants or animals that you took photos of, and then you use iNaturalist to figure out what it is. And then the kids can make a research page about it. Again, kind of creating those fact files, maybe with drawings. And it's a really, really great way to start building some of those like local species identification skills, which is so sorely lacked across both adults and children. So it's great to build really early on into their kids' lives. So this is a really nice one, and again, year round.
Yeah, for sure. I love using the Seek app as well. It's a good one. So we are not going to suggest an activity for December because we understand December is a very busy month in schools with school plays and all sorts of things occurring. We're instead just suggesting another project that can be incorporated year round into the kind of timetable, and that is the Woodland Trust Ancient Tree Infantry. I really like trees, and so this is one that I quite like. It happens all year round, so it's whenever is applicable to you. And what the project aims to do is to map ancient or old trees. So what you do is you find an old or ancient tree and you plot the location of the tree on a map. And you can add information, for instance, the tree species, which if you're lucky enough to have the Seek app, you can use that to identify the species if you don't recognize it yourself. There is a lot of identification guides of trees on the Woodland Trust site, so you don't have to use the app as well. And other key things that you might upload is its size, etc., things like this. Why do this? Well, it helps protect and celebrate UK's oldest trees. These trees have been around for way longer than us, and it's quite nice to celebrate them. Time. It's kind of any time. If you have a tree within your school grounds, that could take 5 minutes or 10 minutes to upload onto the map. Or if there was a case of maybe going for a walk and identifying different trees on the walk, that might take a little bit more time. Hence, again, this difficulty of low to medium. If it's a local tree on your school grounds, there's not much difficulty. If you're going a bit further afield, that might bring a bit of difficulty. And we suggest it's for Key Stage 1 with support and Key Stage 2. So the support comes in the identification of the tree. And to be honest, even now, like as an adult, I can't identify all trees. So there might be some support coming in there with the students. So adaptations, as this is year round, maybe you're going to choose a day that it's not raining, but if it happens to be raining, there are different things you can do. So potentially get the students to generate their own map of their walk to school. If they see any trees on their walk to school, they could draw their own map, potentially linking to geography there with map building skills. But also you could have it as a bit of a a treasure hunt. Maybe some homework could be locating an ancient or old tree somewhere in the neighborhood, and getting a photo of it, or maybe drawing a picture of the tree. So there are a few different adaptations that can be done with activity. And I think it just really, I think once you start noticing how cool trees are, then you start seeing more of them. So I think it's a lovely activity.
Absolutely. So that is our big old citizen science calendar. And hopefully we've kind of given you some ideas for some projects that you might want to take part in this coming year. But I also hope that we've shown you that there are multiple areas of the curriculum that they link to, that there's different projects with different time commitments and different availabilities throughout the year. There's a whole variety of these projects. And then within those projects, you really can adapt them to the needs of your school, to the needs of your pupils, even on just different days when your kids are in different moods. And that they can just be inspiration. Use them as starters to kind of explore a new topic in an exciting way. And it's a great way for you and your class to collect some data, practice some of those scientific skills, and then lead to real change. You know, you are contributing to real scientific research. And so the big picture of this is that when communities work together, we can protect nature, and we really can, you know, create a big impact, which is always a nice message. So we want to say thank you so much for listening. If you have any questions, please email them to education@earthwatch.org.uk. We'd be happy to answer any questions you've got on the back of this video resource. And if you have any feedback on how you found today. So thank you very much. The only other thing I wanted to say is just a reminder that if you haven't watched part 1 of this video resource, looking at kind of citizen science and outdoor learning as a concept, please take a quick look at that one. It's a very short little video resource that introduces these topics. And we also just wanted to let you know that our Earthwatch education website, which will be linked in the description of this video, we have an education community where we have, you know, where we do announcements to a lot of these citizen science projects throughout the year. So, you know, you would get a weekly newsletter signposting to some of these projects. And also we will be able to send out the PowerPoint for these slides, because we're aware that there's a lot of information on these slides and you might want to refer back to them. So that will both be linked on our website, but also if you wanted them directly, you can email us at education@earthwatch.org.uk. But thank you so much for joining us and listening to us. We hope to see you very soon. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you.
Bye.